Yuji will be the downfall of Sukuna, and the entire community is here for it. Especially since the king admitted Yuji's ideal matches his own, and his soul is unbreakable. However, how is that possible when Yuji is still a mere insect in front of Sukuna's overwhelming power? Well, this is where I come in, making sense of everything about the story from chapter 1. Oh, and I will also be addressing many theories, such as Yuji being Sukuna's twin and his final finger. Let's start off with Yuji's plan. He stated that he has figured out a few ways to save Megumi. The immediate thought to pull this off would be his soul switching ability. Yuji's ideal is to save as many people as he can before his death and kill Sukuna. The emphasis is on the word kill, as Yuji's journey throughout the story has pushed him to realize that curses will always be curses. This first occurred in chapter 27. After witnessing Junpei's death, Yuji states the first thing that came out of the depths of his gut was to kill, which Mahito points out, don't you mean exercise? The rage Yuji felt is linked to Nanami's statement in chapter 20, as he realizes Yuji can feel genuine anger and empathy for others. Now, his ideal and soul only got stronger as time went on. Mahito forced Yuji to admit that they were the same, which removed his innocence, where Yuji would kill curses no matter what. However, after the Shibuya incident, Yuji felt like he wasn't worthy of living due to being responsible for Sukuna killing thousands of innocent people. Although he admitted by chapter 2 that he already knew how he wants to die, Yuji felt because of his existence, the people he loves would also suffer. But this is where the crux of his desire to save Megumi stems from. Since Yuji is the most selfless sorcerer there is, he embodies the idea of trying to achieve true jujutsu by fighting for the sake of others. He admits he's a cog, and in chapter 143, Megumi tells him not to be selfish and give up. The first thing Yuji should do is save him and lend his strength. This immediately triggered something in Yuji within chapter 144, as his ideal that was given by his grandfather was now requested. You're a strong kid, so help people. However, with Yuji's soul no longer being shattered, Megumi's broke in chapter 212. As a result, Sukuna used the binding vow. Yuji's selfless nature backfired, as he did not include himself in the contract, where Sukuna couldn't harm anyone, which allowed Megumi to be taken over. Therefore, once again, Yuji had to learn the harsh truth that he almost forgot. Curses will always be curses. Sukuna's mentality to trample on the weak and to kill for sport until his death couldn't be the more polar opposite to his own ideal. For example, even in chapter 212, he still holds on to Megumi's request to save him, stating he should have died sooner to resolve all their issues. But then he thanks them for giving him a role to play in saving the world, which Sukuna mockingly mentioned again in chapter 249 once he realizes their plan to attack his soul. As a result of all of this, Sukuna claims Yuji's strength of willpower can achieve the goal of killing him, and he isn't wrong, because even as early as chapter 3, Principal Yaga taught Itadori that sorcerers must have a purpose to continue. He accepts his fate to sacrifice himself, but will not regret the way he lived, unlike others. So as the story moves forward, in chapter 199, Yuji reiterates that his death is a cheap price to pay and would gladly die if Sukuna goes out with him. And later on, he promises to make the king stifle his misery, where he would eat anything to achieve it. So with Yuji's unwavering ideal and soul, the entire community believes that the final finger that is missing is actually Yuji himself.
What did he say?
Think about it. Yuji has the power to swap souls with other people. He is holding on to it for the moment he cages Sukuna again. Once that happens, he will die surrounded by the people he loves, whilst also taking the king out. This is further confirmed by Gojo, literally stating in chapter 4 that Yuji is crazy when it comes to his desire to kill curses. And then the plan for him to die is mentioned in chapter 2, which brings the story full circle. But But this isn't the only plot device that will be completed, because Yuji saving Megumi also teaches them an important lesson. Remember, in chapter 6, in the juvenile detention center, a mother told Yuji to save her son. However, Megumi claimed that saving a dead man's life isn't worth it, and that it would be a waste of time since it's a lost cause. However, fast forward to now, Megumi sees himself in the same position. The boy has lost his father, sister, body, 10 shadows technique, and everything else that is important to him. He's practically almost dead due to tanking multiple unlimited voids on top of it. But back then, Yuji refused to listen to Megumi's hypocrisy, and he realized by chapter 9 that he made a selfish emotional decision where he did not want to see Yuji die, as he is a good person. Therefore, Megumi has no regrets. As a result, I believe Gege is going to make this come full circle, as upon his first death, Yuji claimed, "I think your way of doing things is also right, but that doesn't mean mine isn't." So the first selfish decision Yuji may take as a sorcerer is to die surrounded by the people that he loves, while saving the entirety of Japan, therefore ending the curse he set upon himself regarding saving as many people as he can. The author Gege stated that he already decided on Yuji's ending. The finale of Jujutsu Kaisen will involve everyone dying except for one person, or one person dying and the rest of the team surviving. However, comments from Gojo in chapter 11 stating he refuses to let Yuji live the best years of their lives does throw a spanner in the mix. But let me know in the comments what you believe, because one thing you're definitely gonna ask me is, ABD, why is Yuji so strong? How could he even kill Sukuna? Well, that is because Yuji is genetically Sukuna's twin, or Kenjaku created him with the last finger. What? No, I'm being serious, as this would explain his abnormal body and strength. Within the first arc, Megumi claimed that if the Tokyo and Kyoto schools faced Yuji all at the same time, without curse energy, they would lose against him. In fact, Yuji's abnormal strength for a sorcerer with no technique was pointed out multiple times in the series. For example, against Higuruma, even without curse energy, his raw strength was still impressive. And then later on, even Sukuna called it out in chapter 214 when he realized the reason behind it. So now let's focus on breaking down what makes Yuji different from other sorcerers, even the ones Sukuna fought 1000 years ago. In chapter 237, Hashima asks the king if he earned the title of being the strongest, or was he born that way. Sukuna claims he was born a cursed, unwanted little wretch. Once again, Gege has made him the opposite of Yuji. In chapter 143, we learn Jin wanted a son no matter what, to the point of even allowing Kenjaku to take over his wife. This was even at the expense of his own father's life. This love is something Sukuna never experienced and thinks it's worthless. Everyone in his life gathered around him to seek out the immense power he had obtained, like Yoruzu, Gojo, or Kashimo. Sukuna throughout his life admitted in chapter 248 that he never had ideals or desires that went beyond himself. The sorcerers are becoming martyrs willing to die for each other. Therefore, Jin's willingness to die just for his son is beyond his understanding. However, after living in the same body as Yuji, he came to accept that these ideals and beliefs are very real and can give a person strength beyond measure.
True, and yeah, that's pretty true.
Yuji has a unique ability to attack the soul directly, confirmed in chapter 249, as Sukuna witnessed this firsthand. But to attain victory, we all know he needs domain expansion. Domain is a reflection of a person's mind, soul, and nature, as confirmed in the official fanbook. For example, Higuruma had a courtroom because of his sense of justice and being a lawyer. Sukuna's is malevolence, as he represents all evil, taking everything in the world for himself. Editor, please can you do a quick Google search? What's the opposite of malevolent? Yup. benevolent. Since Yuji is a cursed object soaked in Sukuna's energy, Gojo told us that he will eventually unlock the king's technique for himself. This would allow Yuji to unlock the opposite domain expansion, as his nature is to save people, leading it to healing instead of spreading pain. But speaking of pain, we all know it's needed to attain enlightenment, to walk the road of samsara. Yuji has suffered throughout his journey and has admitted that he's taken the curses of his fallen comrades on his shoulders. These include Nanami, Higuruma, his grandpa, Nobara, Junpei, Gojo, and much more. These pushed him to become more powerful, where Black Flash is a key to unlocking the true nature of your soul. Mahito proved this to us, and it helps understand the core of curse energy. Essentially, expansion is the sorcerer casting their soul's innate domain and technique out onto the world. In chapter 11, Sukuna claims that it's the heart of a sorcerer. When you connect this to Mahito's claim that could see all souls in all living beings, he states it's too simplistic to call it a heart, as emotions also come from the soul. So with this, we come to understand how Yuji's domain would reflect Buddha's selfless nature. As chapter 20 stated, he gets genuinely upset for others. Even the manga claims in chapter 61 that sincerity is Yuji's greatest weapon, and he's chosen by the Black Sparks. This nature is perfectly displayed in chapter 64. Although Yuko was obese, Yuji didn't treat her any differently. He noticed elegance, and that encourages her to change. As a result, it didn't stop Yuji from not recognizing her immediately despite the drastic difference in appearance, which meant his words were sincere. This further links with the meaning of his name. Yu translates to abundant, help, and brave, whilst Ji means caring for others. His family name, Itadori, comes from Japanese knotweed, which is used in traditional medicine to take away pain. Therefore, now that we know the nature of Yuji's innate domain, once he gains Sukuna's technique and uses Black Flash enough to understand his soul, a domain expansion will occur. Buddha condemned killing or harming living beings, and since Yuji gives immense value to life and wants everyone to have good deaths, his domain could be the negation of any other domain, cancelling them out completely. For example, in chapter 164, domain expansions were a more common technique because they weren't constructed to be fatal. They only forced targets inside to obey the rules of the embedded curse technique. As more domains were constructed to be lethal, the number of users greatly decreased over time. Now, the evidence that Yuji could be Sukuna's twin or his last finger is based on chapter 3 and chapter 223. We were told that Yuji is like a radar. He can detect other fingers within the area due to holding a part of his power. Later on, we even see Sukuna's fingers all resonating with each other, including the dormant ones that were hiding, which made them incredibly easier to find. However, surprisingly with all that, in chapter 223, Ureume failed to find the 20th finger no matter how hard she tried, which seems quite odd given her role and expertise. For example, Ureume already knew about the preparations of the Kodaku ritual as early as chapter 117. The bath was made in advance for Sukuna, and the time span since then would equate to a few months, where she would be trying to find fingers. This points the culprit towards Kenjaku or Gojo. Sukuna makes a hunch that Satoru must have hidden it to make Yuji's execution delayed indefinitely. However, given what we know now, Yuta had killed them all by chapter 223, so hiding the final finger doesn't matter anymore. Therefore, the other possibility is the mastermind that taught Sukuna how to split his soul in the first place, as this meant Kenjaku held all 20 fingers at one point. They have an ancient binding vow due to this exchange, which allowed Kenjaku to escape Gojo's clutches in the first place. But what would Kenjaku do with Sukuna's final finger? In chapter 136, he stated he has much expectations from his son Yuji, and by 222, we see them finally being met as Kenjaku indirectly admits that he has forced Yuji into a corner while speaking to Tengen. He states that the people of of Japan have convinced themselves that they have no control over reality, as no one has the courage to put their life on the line. But if their hand is forced by someone else, they have no choice but to take action. It always begins with a single step. Only then you can make progress towards your own ideal. He holds nothing but contempt for those unwilling to move forward. When we link this to chapter 248, everything starts making sense. The first step was Kenjaku birthing Yuji. As he admitted in chapter 203, he's the fire signal that was the start of a new era. Kenjaku ensured his son would eat Sukuna's finger, which put him into a corner, leaving him with no choice but to move forward to the ideal of killing Sukuna. So with the king admitting Yuji has a chance, this gives context to Kenjaku's statement that as long as he coexists with Sukuna and they are alive, curses will never cease to exist. Why else would Kenjaku also kill higher-ups that targeted Yuji execution? This foreshadows their death once again, since Yuki's whole research that was handed to Yuji was to get rid of curse energy from the world, as she believed in the polar opposite of Kenjaku. Now in the very same chapter, Kenjaku calls Yuji a thing, not once but twice. We usually label something as such when it's an object, and given that Sukuna's fingers are curse objects, it makes perfect sense why Kenjaku would call him one. His main goal was to create a new form of curse energy and had high hopes for his half-breeds. However, Choso and the others turned out to be failures due to being too ordinary, which led him to create a new monster with a merger. Kenjaku admitted in chapter 136 that he knows how to merge a curse object with a subject, as he had done so to create 1000 Culling Game players that are essentially malevolent Yuji Itadoris, as he stated. But whatever he created, it did not exceed the bounds of his own potential. So a curse object with Sukuna's soul in it, when consumed by a human, would be taken over by him, unless it's a curse and not a human. We learned that cursed spirits are attracted to Sukuna's fingers, and when they eat it, they become a special grade curse womb. Sukuna's essence and personality does not take over the cursed spirit, rather it evolves it, showcasing that Sukuna's curse energy holds tremendous power to facilitate growth. In parallel, in a Kodaku ritual, a curse object can be created by soaking in solution of curse energy. This process takes 10 months and 10 days. And surprisingly, this is the same amount of time it takes to give birth to a baby under Japanese convention. They count it as 10 months. Yuji Itadori is exactly that, a living curse object that is soaked in Sukuna's energy for 10 months. This links back to Kenjaku's first conception of the Curse Womb Death paintings, who are also curse objects created with the mixed blood of both a cursed spirit and a human. The difference with Yuji, instead of using curse energy from a cursed spirit, Kenjaku used Sukuna's final finger. The proof to Yuji being a living curse object is him having the soul swap abilities and knowing bloodbending, which he gained after eating his brothers. Like other curse objects, he should be able to absorb curse energy and even curse techniques. We saw this with Nanami's blade, where after his death, it was imbued with his ratio technique. Therefore, Kenjaku used a finger whilst pregnant with Yuji to fuse them together, going even further and beyond from his original experiment. So with Gojo's claim that Yuji has an ability that only appears once every 1,000 years, all the evidence points towards Yuji having some similar genetics. This would even explain why they look similar. And to make this absolute cinema, Gege references Shakespeare's Hamlet in chapter 222, where Sukuna looks at his own skull in irony. According to this scene, the paths of glory lead but to the grave. It represents the idea that death is inevitable and all humans, have achieved glory or not, will have to face it eventually. This means Sukuna's own power in Yuji will be the cause of his death, just like the metaphor claims. Now you may ask, why would Kenjaku go out of his way to do this? Well, it's linked to himself admitting that he he wants to create as much chaos as possible. Kenjaku witnessed Sukuna's strength in the Heian era, and even 600 years later, he admits to Kashimo that there is no one else stronger than him. This is despite his ass being defeated by 6 Eyes users of the past that causes his plan to fail multiple times. With Sukuna being an obstacle he cannot match, and his life goals centered around the optimization of curse energy, a scientist like Kenjaku would figure out any way possible to make it occur. He admitted that the merger plan to create a new monster was his final choice because everything that he created with his own hands could only match his own skill or expertise. Therefore, he wants to see something new after living for so long that can surpass everything. But to enjoy more peak fiction, watch this video regarding Gojo vs Heian era Sukuna. Would Gojo be able to defeat him if it was 1000 years ago?